Hello, dreamers and midnight wanderers. You found your way to Creepy Chillz, where the dark is gentle and the nightmares are kind. Tonight, let the shadows pull you under. But first, whisper to the void below. Globe showing Europe, Africa, where in the world are you listening? Mantelpiece clock, what hour does the moon rule your sky? There's something beautiful about strangers drifting to sleep to the same haunted lullaby. If tonight's story carries you away, leave a comment or just let go. Now, close your eyes. The dark won't hurt you here. Pause, then softer. At least not tonight.
Look at those 3 stars there. The old man indicated a cluster that glowed dimly. Long ago they were sisters, not just ordinary sisters, oh no. They were the daughters of the sky itself. The boy's eyelids fluttered. The old man's words enveloped him like a warm shawl. Each evening, their mother, the vast blackness of heaven, would sing them to sleep. But on one night, the wind took her lullaby away. The sisters cried, and their tears turned into the first shooting stars, silver streaks falling, falling. The old man's voice became slower, more leaden, and when the wind noticed how sorrowful they were, it restored the song. Back, a pause. The boy's breathing became deeper. The legend of the lazy comet. Now that bright one there, the old man whispered, pointing to a slow-moving speck of light. That's Comet Pilo. He was supposed to race across the sky, but he was so very tired. The boy's head dipped. His fingers loosened around the edge of his blanket. All the other comets zoomed and zipped, but Pilo, he just floated. The words of the old man lengthened like taffy. And the moon said, "Pilo, why don't you rest?" So he did, and now he only moves when he dreams. A sigh, the boy's shoulders drooped into the grass. The story of the lost star. And that little one, flickering there? The old man's voice was a mere whisper now. That's Lumi. She got lost on her way to the Milky Way. The boy was nearly asleep. The old man's words dissolved into the night. She begged the North Star for directions, but the North Star was so drowsy it just pointed and whispered, "Follow the moonbeams home." Silence. The boy's chest moved up and down in slow, even waves. Above, the stars shone, 1,000 lullabies sung by the universe itself. The old man relaxed, his own eyes closing. The telescope remained forgotten. The hill fell silent once more, and somewhere a shooting star blazed once only before the world finally slept.
There was a location where time did not rush. It was a tiny tea house, wedged between the creases of the world, where wind went slower and light lingers in the air like golden syrup. The sign on the door, worn down by the centuries, simply said, "Rest here a while." Inside, the air smelled of bergamot and honey, of chamomile and distant rain. The keeper of the shop moved like a shadow, soft-footed, pouring cups of tea that steamed with dreams. Tonight, the shop was full. Hashtag the woman with the umbrella. She arrived at the very moment when the first drops of rain started to fall. A woman in a gray jacket, her umbrella dripping onto the wooden floor. She sat next to the window, where the glass was misted with warmth. The keeper set a cup in front of her. "This one is called Midnight in August," they whispered. The woman brought the cup to her lips. The aroma of old books and summer evenings rose to greet her. She closed her eyes. Asterisk memory unfolded. A porch swing. Fireflies. The hum of her grandmother as the sky darkened to violet. The feel of a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The slow, even groan of swinging back and forth back an asterisk. Her fingers relaxed. The cup fell softly into place on the table. At the far side of the room, the keeper smiled. Hashtag the traveler with no name. He entered from the cold, his boots making shallow prints of melted snow in the floor. His coat was mended, his gloves thin. He did not speak, but merely nodded when the keeper put down a mug of something dark and spicy. "This one's the last train home," the keeper stated. The traveler had a drink. Asterisk memory had taken him. A steam locomotive clattering down the mountains. The rhythmic clang of rails. His father, younger then, gesturing out the window toward the lurching pines. "Look," he had said, "the trees are waving goodbye." The heat of the compartment. The movement of the train, rocking, asterisk. His head lowered. His shoulders slumped into the chair. The keeper smoothed the blanket over his knees. Hashtag, the child holding a broken toy. She was so small the chair almost swallowed her. She had scraped knees, red-rimmed eyes. She hugged a wooden horse with a missing leg. The caretaker dropped to their knees before her and held out a cup the shade of caramel. This is before the storm. They breathed. The child took a sip. Asterisk memory wrapped around her. A kitchen filled with baking bread. Her mother's flour-specked hands making dough into small animals. There, her mother giggled, sticking on a cinnamon drop to a gingerbread cat. Now it can see its way home. Sugar smell. Rain spattering, just starting against the window. Her hold on the toy relaxed. Breathing slowed down. The keeper wrapped the horse in the crook of her arm. Hashtag, the old man who forgot. He came in hesitantly, as if he did not know if he was wanted. His hand shook. His eyes were fogged with years. The keeper led him to the fire and forced a cup into his hands. This is your first sunrise, they said. The old man drank. Asterisk memory came back. A beach at sunrise. Waves curling like cats, uncoiling. His own little feet, bare and wet, sinking into cool sand. Someone, his father, picking him up onto broad shoulders. Look, the voice boomed. The sun is rising just for you. The gold of the light. The salt of the air. The endless, gentle hush of the sea. Asterisk. Tears ran down his cheek. He let his chin fall to his chest. The keeper wrapped a quilt over him. Hashtag, the shop closes. The customers emptied out one at a time. Rain outside sounds like a lullaby now. The hearth fire settles into embers. The keeper goes from table to table, dousing candles, until he is left standing by the glow of a single lantern. They rested in the remaining patch of light, sipping their tea for themselves. Asterisk the taste of silence, asterisk, and eavesdropping on the breathe of the dozing world. There might have been somewhere a clock was ticking. Here, though, time did not rush. Here was always near. The meadow was gentle tonight. Not only the grass, although it swayed in the wind like it, too, had intentions of sleeping, but the air itself, heavy with the smell of clover and the remaining heat of the sun setting behind the hills. And amidst it all, there was a sheep. Not any old sheep. This one had a purpose. Hashtag, the first count, the farmer. He wore his boots heavy with mud. His shoulders were weighed down by the day. He plodded by the meadow fence, one hand massaging the back of his neck, the other holding a lantern that swung. Asterisk swoosh, asterisk. Asterisk swoosh, asterisk. The sheep raised her head. One, she whispered, her voice as puffy as her fur. The farmer stopped. Had he just heard something? A whisper? A sigh? But the breeze was soft and the sheep was very quiet. He turned his head and continued on his way. The light of the lantern became smaller and smaller until it disappeared inside the farmhouse. The sheep opened her eyes slowly. One farmer, sleeping, she said. Though she couldn't see him sleep, she felt it, the way the night settled around the house like a held breath finally let go. Hashtag, the second count, the child. She came running when she shouldn't have, her nightgown fluttering, her bare feet crushing dandelions. I'm not tired, she announced to the moon. The sheep tilted her head. Two, she whispered. The child stood still. Who spoke? The sheep was quiet. She was extremely skilled at silence. The child looked into the dark, and then, in an instant, she yawned. A huge, open, indisputable yawn. Oh, she exclaimed, startled. She sat down immediately in the grass. Two, the sheep whispered once more quietly. One farmer, one child sleeping. The view curled onto her side. Over her eyes, the stars twinkled down, their light streaming like honey slowly spilled over her closed lids. Hashtag, the third count, the night watchman. He wasn't supposed to sleep. That was the entire point of him, to remain awake, to watch over the village border, to stride back and forth and keep watch and not blink. But the meadow was so quiet, and the sheep's voice was so soft. Three, she breathed as he passed. He stiffened. Who's there? The sheep just chewed a mouthful of clover, very quietly. The watchman frowned. He took another step, then another, but his feet felt heavier. His lantern dipped. His chin dipped. 3. The sheep breathed. One farmer, one child, one watchman sleeping. His knees gave way. He sat down against the fence post, his hat falling over his eyes. Somewhere, an owl hooted, a sound as round and black as a hole in the night. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the fourth count. The lovers. They were whispering, their fingers intertwined, their speech too rapid and too airy. But what if? And when we? Do you think? The sheep sighed. 4, she said. And 5. The lovers did not notice her. They weren't supposed to, but the girl's speech was slower on the next sentence. The boy's answer was denser. Their fingers relaxed. Their heads leaned together. Above them, the sheep counted clouds instead. One farmer, one child, one watchman, 2 lovers sleeping. The moon watched, amused, as the girl's curls tumbled onto the boy's shoulder, as his breath evened, as the meadow held them both. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the last count. The sheep herself. The wind moved through the grass like a comb through wool. The sheep blinked, her legs folded beneath her. 6. She mumbled into her own fleece. But no one heard. No one needed to. Somewhere, the farmer snored. The child smiled in her dreams. The watchman's lantern burned low. The lovers' hearts beat in time. And the sheep stopped counting a loss. Deep within the realm of never-ending twilight, deep within the old city of sombrels, lay a library. It wasn't of brick and mortar, but rather constructed from whispers, pieced together by lost time. Its walls consisted of radiating amber stone, the fragrance infused in the quiet musk of remembrance and the silence of something so wide as to comprehend. This was the library of lost dreams, a realm that lay beyond the edges of waking life, where the lost and the discarded were kept. Here, each book held a dream once experienced, a vision that fell between the cracks of time, now lying quietly on shelves that went far into the mist. Within this library, there was a single librarian, Aurelia *, named in hushed whispers, as if the name itself were a dream. She glided through the library as if she were one with it, her footfalls silent as a ghost, her eyes soft as they touched the creased pages of every book. Aurelia's work was a holy one. To nurture these dreams, to read them softly aloud when the air thickened with restlessness, to whisper them back to life, if only for a minute. One night, when the moon illuminated the room with a fine silver light, Aurelia was attracted to one book in particular, its cover worn and weathered, its title barely legible. She stroked its surface with her fingers, sensing the beat of past time beneath them. The book vibrated softly, and she knew, Astra's Gentle Night Star. She opened the book and read aloud, her voice slow and gentle as it drifted through the library, wrapping around the minds of those who happened to be within hearing. The words were like the touch of a feather on skin, and as she read, the room seemed to unfold, folding in upon itself like the pages of a dream. Soft nights, where soft clouds float serenely across illimitable skies. As the first words escaped her lips, something peculiar started to occur. Individuals from every part of the globe, individuals who had never entered the library of lost dreams, started to assemble. They were gathered outside the library, transfixed by the tone of Aurelia's voice. They had no notion as to why they were being drawn, no comprehension of the force drawing them, but they remained standing silently, mesmerized, as if entranced by a spell. Slow rivers flowing through forgotten valleys. Outside, the crowd felt an ache in their chests, an intense tug of the words. In their hearts, pictures grew, clouds that reached from horizon to horizon, rivers with a slow, sleeping rhythm, and forests that lent secrets to the wind. They couldn't turn away, couldn't refuse the library siren. Each word spoke by Aurelia added another layer of dream onto the canvas of their hearts. Within the library, Aurelia kept on reading without any knowledge of the increasing crowd beyond. Her voice became husky and soothing, the language itself creating a spell of enchantment. The dream world she painted started to materialize, not only within the library, but within the hearts of everyone who heard her. The onlookers in the crowd outside experienced a warmth spread in their chests, eyelids becoming heavy, as though sleep itself embraced them with its gentle arms. Silent forests, where shadows dance on the edges of forgotten paths. As they read with each page, the crowd sank deeper into their trance. Others might sense the air surrounding them change, the chilly night air becoming warmer, the faint noises of their daily lives becoming secondary, and replaced by the gentle hum of rivers, leaves rustling, and the distant cry of unheard animals, as if they were being swept away to a realm that didn't lie in the world of wakefulness, a realm that dwelled between thoughts, between the flashing instant when dreams dissolved into memories. As the librarian's voice became softer, words more subtle, the crowd outside was frozen in time. It didn't budge. Their bodies rocked gently, as if between waking and sleeping, their breathing calm and deep. They didn't know they were no longer in the physical realm, but somehow had been brought inside into the dream itself. They were there now, the stars up yonder, distant and dim, as if they watched over all below that sleeps. Aurelia's voice was slowing, words barely audible now. The sheets of gentle nights fought against her fingers, each page turning slower than the previous one. She continued reading. Recognizing this was how dreams progressed, slow, quiet, until they were nothing more than a sigh, a vanishing caress, a shadow on the heart. Outside the library, the dreamers' bodies slumped, their faces calm as they stood in a daze. Their breaths were in sync, and with each breath, the dream itself became stronger, deeper. They no longer perceived the glowing walls of a library or the faint silhouettes of Aurelia within. Instead, they perceived the soft clouds drifting softly across a sky colored in lavender and silver. They listened to the soft lapping of a river, its surface catching the moonlight in soft ripples. They sensed the cool forest shadows caressing their skin and the serenity that only silence could give. Aurelia's voice lowered to a whisper, hardly audible now, as if the dream was escaping her fingers. And in this stillness, time slows to nothing. The last words remain suspended in the air like a light breath, and then silence. Nothing moved for a very long time. The dreamers stood frozen in their trance, suspended between sleeping and waking. Aurelia felt a peculiar stillness as well. She closed the book softly, and the words vanished as if they had not existed at all. The outsiders, the dreamers, now completely immersed in the dream, started to rock, eyelids fluttering as they drifted slowly, almost unnoticed, into a profound sleep. Every individual took with them the subtle beauty of what had transpired, a moment of calmness, of awe, of release to something greater than themselves. Within the library, Aurelia remained, her fingers tracing the pages of gentle nights, a gentle smile on her lips. She knew her job was never complete. The dreams would keep coming, always like rivers, always like clouds. But tonight, here in this world's still corner, sleep had visited those most in need of it, softly and gently. And the library stood, as always, in watch over the world's dreams, holding silent vigil. The night was profound, shrouded in a velvet sky, and the moon suspended like a silvery pearl, casting its gentle light upon the sleeping world. It was not the sort of light that commanded attention, but the sort that whispered softly into the hearts of all who would hear. It was a lullaby, albeit not one being sung with a voice, but interwoven through rays of light, faint and gentle, a muted hum that made its way through the quietness of the evening. In a slumbering village on the coast, the moon started to sing. It began where the fisherman rested, solitary in his boat, floating on the glassy surface. His calloused and worn hands clasped the sides of his boat, his eyes weighed down with the weariness of a long day. The sea, its usual tempest of waves and spray, was still, its surface mirroring the moonlight like a pool of still water. At the first stroke of the wordless song of the moon on his ears, a silent peace filtered into his bones. The darkness that surrounded him was more gentle, as if the world itself had sighed and dropped into slumber. The fisherman shut his eyes, letting the soothing tug of the lullaby sweep him up into its fold. His breathing grew slow, and with every note of the moon's song, his body loosened further into the boat. The rocking of the water beneath him was like a cradle, and he allowed the lullaby to envelop him like a blanket, falling into the deepest, most comfortable sleep he had experienced in years. The village itself seemed to quiet too. Windows clicked closed, curtains drawn like the last notes of a symphony disappearing into the night. But on one windowsill, a cat stretched. The cat had been observing the fisherman, its golden eyes sparkling in the darkness. It had lain awake for hours, its coat tousled from the cool air, its tail twitching irritably. But as the moon's lullaby washed over it, something shifted. The air itself began to vibrate, filled with a still magic that loosened the cat's muscles. It stretched out slowly, arching its back and issuing a low, contented purr as the gentle light of the moon drenched it in a radiance that seemed like warmth to the core. The cat's eyes drifted closed, its form balling up tightly. The lullaby threaded through its fur like a soothing hand stroking through the night, and it felt the pressure of sleep settle gently on its eyelids. The streetlights grew less bright in its thoughts, and the noises of the village receded into the distance, as it drifted into the sort of sleep that only the moon's singing could induce. The world went on, yet for the cat there was only the soft, secure hug of sleep. And afterward, in the quietest part of the house, an old woman sat beside the fire. Her time-worn, carefully aged hands worked the needles steadily, the rhythm of her knitting as ancient and unchanging as the world itself. The fire snapped softly, the orange glow dancing in her weary eyes. She was at rest, surrounded by the warmth and the silence that filled her home. The house, as the village, was shrouded in the night, and all around her, the world was slowing down. But when the moon's lullaby came to her, she stopped. The knitting needles froze, hanging in midair, and she gazed towards the window, towards the gentle, shining light. Her eyes became far away, as if she could see past the walls of her house, past the village, into the sky itself, where the moon's song danced like mist. Her breathing slowed as the moon's melody enveloped her, gentle and soothing, like the touch of a loved one. The burden of a lifetime's concern, the cares that always lingered at the edge of her thoughts, all dissipated. She exhaled deeply, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to simply exist. The flames crackled quietly, but the heat in the room was now not from the fire, but from the moon's gentle grasp. She set aside her knitting and closed her eyes. The lullaby enveloped her like a blanket, its soft, invisible arms holding her in a place where time did not pass, where she could just rest, where there was no necessity to be anything but at peace. Outside, the village was sinking into a profound sleep. The street lamps grew dim, the noise of dogs barking in the distance dissolved into a dream, and the air itself became heavy with the gentleness of the night. The moon's lullaby filled everything now, not only in the hearts of those who heard it, but in the very beat of the earth itself. Every silent note, every gentle pulse, filled the air with a peace so perfect that even the stars paused in their eternal dance. The fisherman, lost on the water, the cat on the windowsill, and the old woman by the fire, one by one, they drifted off to sleep, the song of the moon leading them softly down. In the distance, the music went on, never louder, never more hasty, but always there, always calming. It was the music of rest, of release, of yielding to the soft arms of the night. It was music that only the moon could sing, for she alone could entwine light and darkness into a cradle song that could lull the world. And thus the village slumbered, bathed in the silvery light of the moon. It was not the slumber of fatigue, but the slumber of those who felt secure, those who were able to relinquish themselves to the night on the knowledge that the moon would protect them. Moment by moment, the world became quieter, gentler, as if the air itself contained the visions of those who slumbered under its light. The moon's lullaby flowed through the village like a dream, and in its melody, the world rested. The music resonated in the hearts of the fishermen, the cat, the old woman, and all the rest. And as they slept, they knew, deep within their bones, that they were caught by something greater than themselves. The evening had fallen, the lullaby had been sung, and in its arms, all was as it ought. And so, while the village slept, the moon's lullaby went on, ever soft, ever steady, ever waiting for the next evening to resume its song.